All right, this is jpeg2RAW, show number 86, recorded on June 10th, 2013. We're coming in a different time than usual, same time, different day, coming on Monday because we have a great photographer, and I was showing some of the photos during the pre-show, doing a little slideshow of your photos, Don, and I know some of them are going to need some explanation, and I'm looking forward to those because Don is the king of probably macro in general, but definitely of snowflake in general. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but also about other macros too, not just snowflakes. But you do some amazing snowflakes. I never knew that kind of detail was there.
Well, I'm happy to offer all the explanations and to share all of my secrets that I can about any of these images. Half the fun of it is kind of discovering the world on such a small scale. That's one of the big interests I have with macro photography. I've always been kind of science-minded, but when it comes to photography, when you get that close to things, you see it in an entirely different light. And I find that after I take the picture, I often go in and explore it a little bit more fully. Like I'll get into the science and the physics, or identify what species of bug that is, or it helps me sort of explore more of the area of the world that I'm most interested in. And so it kind of bridges the gap between all of my interests. And so macro photography is quite a fun thing, and everybody will look at it differently. Yeah. Everybody finds something different in maybe it's a snowflake, and they might just admire the beauty or the symmetry or the science or maybe all of it. And the same thing is true of much of it. Not everybody likes the spiders so much, but there's behind you there's an assassin bug eating a fly. That's not exactly the most beautiful of images, but it's interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, and people who watch the show may think that I do this on purpose, but I don't. I actually spend a little time before the show starts, especially with somebody like Don, working on their last name, and I still mess it up more times than I'm not. I really want to say it right because out of respect, but it's almost I almost have to laugh because I'm so bad at it. So why don't I just say your first name and then you say your last name? Or won't you say both? You want me to try?
I want you to try.
Okay.
Go for it.
Don Komarechka.
Not even close, but I'll give you a gold star for trying.
Dang it. What we need to do is me just say it over and over again and play the recording.
Right.
Yeah, that would work.
Okay.
Komarechka.
Don Komarechka. All right, we got that out of the way. Now I can be done with being embarrassed. So later in the show, we're going to go right into Don, but I want to make sure everybody who's out there hangs out for the last part of the show because we do have the contest, the challenge, the Made Challenge. We're going to announce the winners, Tim, at the end of the show. We had our 3 finalists, and we're going to announce the winners. So until then, keep calm. We'll announce the winners and go over each photo at the end of the show. But I want to get right into Don. And also, we're talking about this a lot in the Facebook group. We don't need to go over it too much here because we've already talked about it. But Lightroom 5 has officially been released.
And I purchased it a little while ago, and it is taking forever to download.
Well, I got it. I got it last night, Tim. So when I went into, you can see it here. When I went into my Adobe, whatever that is, manager, the photo manager.
Application
manager. There it was. Boom. Lightroom 5 was there. Oh. So I downloaded it. I installed it. And
for me, it was a little bit strange, though, because it showed up just as saying Lightroom. And I wasn't sure if it was Lightroom 4 or 5 or whatever it is. It was just blanket Lightroom. But it didn't say that I already had it installed. So I clicked install, and sure enough, we were good to go about an hour later.
So yours did not say Lightroom 5?
It said Lightroom.
Huh.
Well, of course, when I installed it and ran it, everything, it's Lightroom 5.
Yeah. I'm hearing from, in the pre-show, there was somebody who was talking about it, and they were saying that it's taking quite a while to convert the catalog. I don't know how large of a catalog they have. I mean, if you have a massive catalog, that may take a while. But I have not played with it yet, so I don't really we don't spend any time on it tonight. I can't imagine it's that much different than the beta.
It didn't look like they
changed it. I tried to find a change log, because I know that they're going to fix bugs and they're going to do all this and that. From Lightroom 4 beta to Lightroom 4, they changed the way the clarity function worked, and so there was some changes within that transition that were useful that might be worth knowing about. but I can't find any information online between the newest beta to the full version. So maybe there's nothing. Maybe it's just a little bit of extra polish, and off you go.
Yeah, I didn't have any performance. Not performances. There's still some performance issues with it, but I did not have any crashes or anything like that. It worked fine for me.
Well, I had a few crashes in the beta,
Okay.
but very seldomly. A lot of it was when I was jumping across modules or doing really funny stuff, and hopefully it's going to be a little bit more stable. But I can't vouch for it yet because I haven't dug into it too deeply.
Okay. Well, Don, you take some amazing. I've never seen snowflakes like this. Now I did grow up in South Louisiana, so there were very few snowflakes, and even now they live way up north in the Atlanta area, which is not really that north. It's a joke. We do get
Well,
some.
you think about north though. I mean, I'm at about the same latitude as central South Dakota.
Yeah, that's way north from me.
Okay.
Yeah, we
That's
get
north of me, and I'm up in New York.
a snowstorm here is like a half an inch.
Well, I mean, you only need one, right?
Yeah, that's true. And so
And
once
they're all different.
I'm gonna pull up a few. So as we're talking, I'm gonna pull up a few shots here. And are you where you can see them Are you on our website where you can see them?
I'm not. Should I be?
Yeah, it might help.
Should I
You
pull it
have
up
to
live?
you have to mute when you come in. But do you need me to give you the link? It's JPEG.
Yeah, if you could throw it in the chat there, then we could easily get that together, and I'll click on into it.
It's there now. Oh,
Not
actually,
that chat. Tim put it in the chat on the website.
The chat that I haven't gotten to yet.
Yes. As I said it, I was like, well, that was pretty stupid.
Oh, Tim's new at this, but these shots.
Well, bring one up and start talking about it, and I'll know
Yeah,
which one you're talking about.
Well, there are a lot of them look the same to me, so I don't know how I'm going to describe it.
Mike, all snowflakes are individual, no two
They
alike.
are. I mean, while I say they look the same, similar. I should say they look similar. It is amazing how unique each one is.
It really is.
It's amazing how many unique features you can bring out even on the same snowflake. I think I put one in there. You might have it with the two snowflakes side by side, and it's the same snowflake, but it's photographed from two separate angles. And even within the exact same structure, you can bring out different details as you wish based on the angle of which you're photographing it.
That's right, because we're looking at it as a two-dimensional, and it's a three-dimensional snowflake, so a different angle brings up different features.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you think about it because a snowflake is three-dimensional.
Right.
There's depth to it, although most of the times they're pretty thin. Sometimes they'll be growing on different planes. So you'll have different growths happening on different levels, and sometimes it'll be a split snowflake where some branches are growing below others, and they can actually overlap where normally they wouldn't be able to because they would just hit into each other. So you can tell a three-dimensional snowflake simply by looking at it and seeing if the branches are overlapping or hitting each other. And it's kind of an interesting concept to look at it and see it in depth. Most of the snowflakes photographed in the past had been photographed on microscope slides, and the camera was put directly so that the focal plane was parallel to where the snowflake was, and that translated into a fairly crisp image, and the light would come up from underneath, and that's how they were lit. All of my snowflake images are photographed on an angle, so you can get some edge detail and definition and depth, but you can play around with things like surface reflection, which you couldn't play around with before, and some interesting colors due to optical interference or refraction and all sorts of interesting stuff. So there's a lot of science and physics when you get right down to it.
Okay, I put it into the link in the chat.
I got it right there.
And when you come in, you might play an ad to begin with. I don't know.
Oh, lovely.
I don't know.
Who is your sponsor?
This is not us getting anything from it. This is
darn.
live stream doing it so we get free service.
Well, then I guess that's kind of a sponsor in a roundabout way.
So when that's done, we can start looking at some of these. And the question's already coming in. This is the first question I had. And somebody says, "I'll sponsor you." Seth, yes, you can sponsor us. One of the things I guess that's helping is that you're not down in South Louisiana, but how are these things not melting? And the next question, I kind of know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway to lead into it, is what are you using? What are they on? It's always black. What are they on?
Good question. I'll answer both of them. For one, they're not freezing because I'm outside. And if it's minus 20 degrees outside, I'm going to freeze my butt off, but the snowflake is going to be just fine. And so I'll be working with it just after it's fallen. And it falls on a black mitten. That's the background that is, it's black in most of the images. If you were to look at them up close, you'll see almost like a dark cloud effect, which happens when the snowflake kind of, or the background rather, comes a little bit in and out of focus at different brightnesses. And it gives a very interesting look to the background instead of just being solid black. But I use a mitten for a number of reasons. One of them is simply because I'll have a dark background that gives me a lot of contrast on the snowflake. But more practical than that, the fibers of the mitten will lift the snowflake away from the background. If I was photographing it on a flat surface, then I'm typically going to be dealing with all sorts of weird textures coming in on the background at every single point. And if that's happening, then it's really hard to edit that out. Whereas if a few fibers come in here and there, it's not all that difficult to go in and remove them. Even more practical than that is the fibers of the mitten will lift the snowflake away and only be hitting it on maybe 2 or 3 different points, acting as an insulator, which will also prevent the snowflake from melting if it's right near the freezing point. And if it would come in contact with a surface that is radiating heat for whatever reason, then it would melt right away, but it won't melt on the mitten.
And obviously you're not wearing a mitten. You've set it down
No.
somewhere.
The mitten is lying flat, and it's kind of almost a tradition now that I've been photographing on this mitten, because that's what I started with. And I did try to find different things. I tried different felts and different fabrics and different types of surfaces, but nothing worked better than this old woolen mitten that my grandmother had given me. And so, and it's also the very first thing that I had ever tried to photograph a snowflake on, aside from photographing a snowflake on top of other snow, which didn't work all that well because you've got white on white, and you lose all detail. It just
it's hard
kind of
to get
blends
the
into
isolation.
Exactly.
So something I should have asked at the beginning is, how did you get into macro photography? Have you been photographing for years as a kid or whatever, and then decided to, hey, I want to photograph bugs? Or how did you get into macro? And then did you go straight into snowflakes, or was that something that eventually led into snowflakes?
So my first macro lens was the 100mm macro lens. Canon makes it. It's a great lens, and I started playing around with bugs, usually like butterflies, and I just sit myself down in a patch of flowers, and I would just enjoy myself for a couple of hours, because who knows what's going to come along. You don't really have to move in order to get the new subjects. You'll find ants and spiders and butterflies and flies and all sorts of stuff, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. I've only been taking pictures, I'm going to say professionally, for about 4 years, maybe a little less than that. And I've only owned a camera for about a year longer than that. And so I never was really interested in photography as a kid. But, as a young boy, I'd be, trapping bees in nets and things and throwing them in the freezer so that they would calm down and stop moving so much, and then taking them out again and looking very closely at them, but never really had an interest in photography. But I always had the bug catching net when I was 8 years old or younger, and out trying to investigate. I will shamefully admit that I would burn ants with a magnifying glass as a very young child.
What boy has not done
been
that?
there, done that.
Every boy has done
that. I'm sure many young boys have.
It's a rite of passage.
And I feel so bad about it now, but it's just it's part of growing up, and so I was always interested in the small world. And when I bought my first digital SLR, I quickly realized that I could go and photograph this world. So I bought the equipment to do so. And, like most people that aren't initiated into this area of photography, it's one of those things that that you think, well, right off the bat, you've got to spend a lot of money on gear. You've got to spend a lot of money on, you got to get the right lens, you got to get a good camera, you got to get a good flash. And after I did buy all of that stuff and got good results, I realized, you can use a Pringles can for a flash. You can put your lens on backwards for a lens, and there's a lot of really easy ways to get close and to get good light and to make good images. The snowflake that you have up on the screen right now is one of the closest that I've ever done. Each of those little crystals measure about 0.4 millimeters in diameter. They're absolutely tiny. That's photographed at about 6:1 life size and then cropped in significantly. So I mean, you could almost start qualifying that in the micron scale. It would be about 400 microns. And so that's the kind of stuff that I really get fascinated about. The closer, the better. And you'll find if you've got some beautifully organic structure, you know, even a butterfly, you can get closer and closer in on the wings of it or the eye of a fly, and the detail never stops. And the same thing is true of snowflakes. You know, the closer you get, the better they are.
Well, this one up here now looks like a piece of glass.
It does.
Just about. And you can see the three-dimensional quality.
Oh, absolutely. It does not look like a snowflake.
Yeah. And now the interesting thing about that is you'll also see color in that particular snowflake as well.
Is that a reflection of something or impurities in the water?
That is optical interference. So thin film optical interference is the same phenomenon you'll see in an oil slick or in a soap bubble. And that pattern will generate a particular color based on the thickness of whatever is causing it. And so with a soap bubble, with the thickness always changing, you get a rainbow effect. And sometimes you get that in a snowflake too. In this case, it was at one specific thickness in between. It's probably a layer of air in between ice, and that the thickness of that layer of air is showing you green as that optical interference pattern. But if you bring up another one, I think I gave you a couple that have a bit of a rainbow pattern in them.
I got one for you.
Yeah, so there's a couple of them. There you go. And you can see that there's a bubble trapped inside of the ice, and the bubble is round, and so its thickness is changing, and so too is the thickness of the ice. And so a combination of both of those will generate this rainbow effect inside of this tiny, tiny snowflake, about the same size as the snowflakes you were just showing.
Wow.
All right, so you're obviously you're probably using a macro lens. When you I want to go back for a second, but you said stick a lens on your camera backwards. So I got my D700 here.
Yep.
And you know I don't know which lens is best, but I got an 85 millimeter here. How do you
how
do you stick a lens on backwards?
You can buy a little adapter to do it.
Okay.
Typically, the wider the angle, the greater the magnification.
Oh, okay.
A 50 millimeter lens will get you about 1-to-1 life size. And typically, I like to mention the 50 millimeter, especially for Nikon shooters, because you'll like if you've got the older style lens, it'll still have the aperture control on the lens itself, which is very helpful when you try and put it on backwards, because you can then still control the aperture when the camera's not controlling the lens. And that will allow you to get, if you take the lens, put it on its closest focusing distance, and just hold it in front of the camera backwards. Look at a coin or something, and you'll see it just greatly magnified. You can buy an adapter for about $5 on eBay that just has a lens mount on one side and a filter thread on the other side for that lens, and that'll just couple the two together so you don't have to hold them in place and worry about getting your fingerprints all over your mirror and all that kind of stuff.
Is that a lens, a tube, a lens tube? Is that what they call a lens tube?
It's not. No, this
Extension
is just
tube.
a reversal adapter. That's all this is. But an extension tube is another way to get close with your lens on the proper way.
Okay.
So if you can imagine, back in the world of like large format photography, and I've actually got a large format camera right behind me here, you would have bellows on the camera, which you'd move some adjustments and you'd change the distance between the film plane and the lens itself. And the further away the lens was from the film plane, the closer you would be able to focus on the front of the lens.
Okay.
And most lenses are built with an optical formula that will allow them to focus all the way to infinity, so you know the moon or mountains in the background, and then come to whatever that closest distance is. Macro lenses usually come as close to 1-to-1 life size. And a lot of people don't know what that is. I'd like to explain that for a second. 1-to-1 life size is a term that is thrown around a lot, but a lot of people don't really understand. The best way to explain it is we go back to the world of film for a second, and if you photograph a coin, a quarter is a pretty good example, and you take a photograph of a quarter at 1-to-1 life size, and then you get the film developed and you take that little snippet of film and you got that frame of film in your hands, and you take the quarter and you overlay them and they fit perfectly.
Okay.
So it exists in reality the same size as it appears on the film piece of film or on your digital sensor in today's technology. So that's 1-to-1 life size, and a regular macro lens can get that close.
Do all macros?
But a normal lens won't typically focus that close. Its range is a little bit more limited.
Yeah.
Right.
So what you can do is you can put extension tubes in between the camera and the lens. Kenko makes a great set of electronic ones that keep communication between the two, but you can get a $5 set off eBay that you'd have to use a manual lens to get the most out of. But the point is, you're shifting the focus of the lens closer to the front element, just as you would in an old large format camera when you move the bellows further out and you can then focus closer to the front lens. And so you no longer can focus to infinity. You might only be able to focus 10 feet away, but now your closest focusing distance is much closer. You're shifting that range to closer, and it becomes a macro lens. Dedicated just to the close-up stuff. If somebody was 20 feet away, you couldn't take their picture. And that's the benefit of extension tubes. You can put them on any lens. I'll use them on my 24 to 105. And it turns it into a macro lens that can get 1-to-1 life size very easily. Or you can put them on a macro lens you already have, and you can get even closer. So you can get 2-to-1 life size, or even further, depending on how many extension tubes you decide to use. Okay. But the lens that I'm using is a bit of a special beast. Canon's the only company that makes one, and it is a 1 times to 5 times magnification, they label it, but it's 1-to-1 to 5-to-1.
Wow.
So it starts at the closest distance that normal macro lenses will get to, and then it goes 5 times closer. But I can't focus any further away than 10 centimeters. It's dedicated just to this kind of work. And if I put extension tubes on this, I get about 6 or 7-to-1 life size. And so that's what I use to photograph all of my snowflakes. Some of them are big. Some snowflakes are as big as, like the one behind you right now is pieces of a snowflake. And I estimate that snowflake, if it was a whole image or a whole crystal itself, to be about maybe a centimeter or so in size. And you don't need any fancy tricks to get a snowflake that's that big in the frame. Some of them are big. You have to get all the right conditions in the storm, and you might only get one storm a winter that will create snowflakes of that size. But regular macro gear can get you there. The smaller stuff I kind of find the most interesting because it's the most symmetrical. And the smaller they are, the more symmetry you have, and that will relate to a little bit more of a pristine look to the images. And then you need special gear to get there.
I can see several challenges with this, and that being lighting and the depth of field.
Yeah. So both big challenges. Lighting, thankfully, in this particular subject is handled pretty easily. Like the one that you're showing up now is about 1 millimeter in diameter, and it's one of those small ones that is very symmetrical. It's lit with a ring flash. Okay. And this ring flash allows me to get a very even lighting. And I like to use ring flashes in a lot of my macro work that doesn't have anything spherical. If it has something that's very round, you'll get a ring flash reflection off of the surface of it, like water droplets or the eyes of a spider. But on snowflakes, you don't have to worry about that. You just get a very nice even lighting. And I can adjust the banks. The flash will have 2 banks of light, a left and a right, and you can adjust the ratio on that. And if I make maybe the right bank, 5 times or 6 times brighter than the left, and I can angle it just so I can get the light coming in on an angle. And getting the light in on an angle allows me to play with surface reflection. And the angle has to be very precise to get that to happen. So there's a lot of guesswork involved in this. There's a lot of readjusting my angle, readjusting my positioning. And because of that, all of my snowflake photographs are handheld. There's no tripod required for this type of work.
Wow. All of them are handheld. So I would have never guessed that. Actually, I knew that because I watched some of your other stuff. But when I first looked at this, I would have never guessed that these could have been handheld because I how close you must be. That is amazing. But I want to one thing before I forget is you talked about ring flash, and I was looking that up before the show. And I see, Nikon, has some fairly expensive ring flash that's on either side of the lens, and that's like almost $500.
That's a beautiful flash. The Nikon R1 or the R1C1, I think, is the one with the mobile ones that can be repositioned. And I'm envious of that system because Canon doesn't have a mobile macro flash. But yeah, the Canon ring flash that I have, the MR14EX, isn't cheap. It's going to run you, around $550 or so, depending on where you are, give or take. And so it's a bit of an investment. But you look at some of the macro gear out there, And I don't know what the prices are right now, but I think it was last year or the year before, Canon rolled out its 100mm L series macro lens. And it had quite a price tag along with it. It was quite a jump up from the regular 100mm lens that I had had. And the price difference between the two lenses, it was about equal to the cost of the ring flash. So you could buy the non-image stabilized lens and a ring flash for about the same cost as the stabilized lens. And that ring flash would do you so much more than a stabilizer in the lens ever would. And so it's just, you know, spending your money in the right ways.
Right.
The ring flash is, you don't need to have one. For this level of work, though, when you're at that extreme magnification for snowflakes, you can't be juggling too many variables because you've got enough to deal with as it is. So having the ring, the flash is mounted to the front of the lens, so you don't have to worry about holding it or having an assistant or anything like that. An assistant wouldn't stick with you in the cold for very long.
Now, you know, looking at these, and I just did a search on Amazon, so I don't know what the other two are there. The price of $50 makes me seem like they're probably not that good.
Yeah, they're probably LED based flashes, which
and
means
it does say LED, yeah.
Yeah, so the flash is then going to be a much longer duration, and that's going to be the biggest culprit there, because you need a very fast flash duration for this. Otherwise, motion blur is going to destroy much of your work.
Or would these be of any use in like a portrait setting, or only because of the way they do it?
So there are ring flashes used in portraits, but they're bigger flashes. They're going to be like the ring flash that I have just fits right around the end of the lens. But if you're using a ring flash designed for portraiture, it's going to be a much bigger flash size. And you'll see it, sometimes you'll see a ring in a model's eye, and that's created by that ring flash itself.
Okay.
Well, you're right. I think I have seen that, and that now makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So that was the lighting that the lighting you have to use is a ring flash is one of the ways to do it. What about the focus?
Right. So you've got an image up right now that is showing what a snowflake would look like almost out of camera. Right now, what you have is a stack of multiple frames of it, but you're only seeing one of those frames. Or you might be seeing all of them in that particular example. I'm not sure. I gave you a sequence from 1 through 4 or 5.
That one,
and it just
this one.
It kind of shows the workflow that I have to go through.
Oh.
And each of these frames is only going to have the tiniest sliver. Well, that's the opposite direction. That's even getting better. That's after I've cleaned her up.
Oh, okay. So should I start here? Well, it is a slight delay between when I do it.
It's a slight delay. Yeah, there you go. That's the beginning. So that's one frame out of the camera.
Okay.
And so what happens is I only have a tiny sliver of focus, and there's no way to expand beyond that. The laws of physics say that light won't bend that way. And we can get into a technical discussion about diffraction limiting and how light bends around a small opening and all that stuff. But I'll save that for the extracurricular studying if anybody wants.
And you do workshops on this. It's one of the ways. One of the ways you make money is you do workshops on macro photography and other things.
Yeah, and I've got a macro photography workshop going on right now. I took some students out on Saturday in the field, and there's a 3-week evening class session as a component to that as well, and that's winding up on Wednesday. And everybody's having a great time of it, myself included.
And you travel some, so we don't always have to go to Canada to take the class.
No, I did one at the Brooks Institute of Photography in Santa Barbara, California, earlier this year, and they might be having me back in the fall to do something not necessarily macro related, but that's still in the works, so I'll follow up with that when I have more details. But when I'm doing any macro work, the depth of field is a problem. You're never going to get the entire frame in focus as far as you want it to be. In this case, I can get the center part of that snowflake in focus, but the side branches will fade off. And so I have to photograph this thing at every possible focus point along the way. And that means I have to move the camera forward and backward ever so slightly. In this case, I might have taken 200 photographs of this snowflake because I have to overshoot. It's handheld, so I'm not sure. I have no confirmation that I've gotten every possible point. And because of that, I always have to take more than I need until I can have at least a certain level of confidence that I've gotten everything that's required. And then putting it together, in what you see here, I've aligned the layers in Photoshop, and there might be about 40 or so layers in this particular image. Because they're handheld, they don't line up automatically in the frame. Photoshop has a great auto-align tool that will put them all in sequence for me. that nudges them left or right or up or down, and can do some perspective correction as well if I happen to be a little bit sloppy and moving my angle a little bit. So that's the second step. There is after I do a focus stacking algorithm in Photoshop, and it's using the auto blend layers feature. And there's a stacking option right in there that will take all of the frames and put them together, bringing out the most in focus areas of each one into the final piece.
It does that automatically in Photoshop?
It does it automatically, but it goofs up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to get everything perfectly, and in fact, it's also going to bring the background more into focus. So I have more fibers in the mitten that I have to deal with. But I have a bit of a solution to that, because if I take the one frame of the snowflake that is focused the most forward, which has the mitten the most out of focus, I can paint that layer back in and use that as my background to start. So then, if you go to the next one there, you'll see that effect where the background becomes more out of focus. But all I've done is I've painted in the focus of the forward most focused image, which is a great time saver for me than dealing with all the clutter that was there and having to get way too friendly with my clone tools. So. That's how the Photoshop automatic process will typically finish. From there, I have to go in and correct for all sorts of alignment issues and cleaning up the background and cleaning up the color, and the entire editing process on one of these images probably takes about 4 hours.
Wow.
So from the time where I've got the snowflake and I do some basic edits in Lightroom, taking that forward through to Photoshop with the stacking and the cleaning up and all of that stuff, it's a lengthy process.
All right, so you said you took, and anybody who's taken macro, I have a macro lens here. I have it's actually a Tamron. I usually shoot Nikon, but back when I did the research on it, this was one of those exceptions where Tamron makes a good lens. Tamron 90 millimeter. It's a 1:1, 2.8 lens, and anybody who's taken macro shots knows that you get very little in focus. I mean, you go to take a picture of something, you take very little in focus. When we looked at that first image, it's kind of hard to see in a small thing while we're talking about, but you can definitely see a good part of the image is not in focus.
Well, and the part that you see in focus is a fraction of a millimeter. Like we're talking very small. And I've got to move the camera fractions of millimeters forward and backward in order to get that focus in play.
Now, you said you do this handheld as well?
It's handheld, yeah.
He does it handheld, and you said you take 200 images. So is this where you are, well, and that's just a rough number. You may be more or less sometimes. But 200 images, are you just holding the shutter down and moving it a tiny bit? Or are you taking one shot, move a tiny bit, taking one shot? It seems like the amount you'd have to move is so minuscule. How can you keep track of that?
I go on the fastest continuous shooting that I can do. Okay. And that will allow me to sort of sway through the focus a little bit and capture as much as I can when I'm moving kind of fluidly back and forth. Keep in mind, a lot of these are small. Some of them only have 1 millimeter in their complete diameter.
That's true.
And so I have to sway very, very slightly. But what I'll do is I'll typically hold the camera with my right hand on the camera and my left hand at the very front of the lens. And I'll use my thumb and my index finger to grab the ring flash, and I'll base I'll put the side of my hand on the ground or the surface where the mitt is currently being stored on. And so if I can do that, I can hold that, and I'm holding the ring flash here. My hand is kind of acting a little bit like a tripod in a sense.
Yeah.
And that will allow me to then move my index finger and my thumb forward and backward ever so slightly to sort of pull and push the camera forward and backward. So it's entirely handheld, but I am finding the best ways to stabilize the camera quick.
Yeah, that is amazing. So you take 200 or plus or minus, and then you cull through those and pick out the ones you need for the focus stacking.
The culling process is the hardest because they're out of order. So I might have one sequence that will have a certain number of frames in order, but then I have to remember, I've got to block out all distractions and remember what sliver of focus I'm missing as I go through all of the rest of them. And then I take my best guess into Photoshop, stack it, and then find the ones that I'm missing, go back into Lightroom, find the ones that I'm missing, re-add them to the selection, and start over.
And while that sounded hard, it's even harder than it sounds, because we're talking about minuscule focus differences on something that the color of this thing is pretty standard. I mean, it's not like puzzle pieces. This is harder than a puzzle.
It is. I wrote an article on the Digital Photography School website recently. Maybe you could put that in the show notes. That does detail the focus stacking process quite extensively, a step by step, if you will. So if anybody wants to follow the exact same procedure that I would go through, then you can find it there. But because if I try to detail it here, it's too much information. It just it gets lost in the shuffle. But it's a time-consuming process, and you've got to take care at every step of the way in order for things to be aligned properly and to be believable.
Well, that is amazing, Don.
And I don't just do it to thank you. I don't just do it to the snowflakes, though. A lot of my macro work is focus stacked. A lot of my water droplet photographs, in fact, almost all of them, apply a focus stacking technique very similar to that of the snowflakes as well. And some of my insect work is done with the same idea.
Oops, I just made a mistake. But you brought up something that I wanted to go into now, and that is your water droplets. That was a good transition, Don. And everybody out there in chat, again, I can only show you a certain quality through here because we're streaming. We'll have the links to all of Don's sites where you can go and view these. He sells a lot of these too. On your site, I think you also have when your workshops are and where they are. So people who want to sign up for that, and you have a book out.
Well, I have a book
one
out
coming.
right now. I would point everybody towards the book that's coming out.
Yes.
My Snowflake book, due out in October of this year, and that's going to be one to look for. It's been successfully crowdfunded, and it's now in production, or at least I'm producing the pages and that kind of stuff. I've talked to the printers and everything's all set up. But so the image that you have up right now, the flower petal with a water droplet on it.
Yeah, switched on you.
Yeah, no, but this is one that I want to mention because this one is lit using a Pringle scan.
Okay, you had mentioned that earlier, and I think you and I talked about this in the pre-show. But for people who don't know how on earth you would do that, why don't you go ahead and explain.
Hold on a second. I'm going to go and grab it. Just give me one moment.
Okay. And guys out in chat, make sure we'll leave some time for you to ask questions. Just ask them as you come through. If I miss them, we'll get you at the end of the show too.
So this is the Pringle scan.
Let me come bring you back more into focus. There we go.
All right. It's a pretty simple device, and I'm not the first person to create this. This is a Pringle scan that I've cut on one side to match an opening for my off-camera flash because my camera buddy doesn't have a pop-up flash. And I cut the other side on a 45-degree angle and covered it with just wax paper, anything that'll work as a diffuser. And so what happens is this will take the light from my flash that normally won't hit my subject and funnels it down towards the end of my lens where the light is most needed. And then that gets the light where it needs to be. And that photograph was created using that Pringle scan idea, just sort of as a proof of concept, to say that you can do macro flash on the cheap. You don't need anything fancy. So it costs you a snack, and away you go. And if you screw up, then you get to buy another snack, right? You get rewarded for your mistakes.
That's a cheap modifier, and it comes with food.
It does. Nothing better.
Awesome. So Terry out in chat said this one is his favorite of yours. This one with the earth in it. I guess that's what that is. Yep, earth in it. And
in the droplet, you've got. I have this map, and this is a map of the Earth, courtesy of NASA, and public domain. Thank you, NASA. And so I put it in behind the droplet upside down, because when it gets refracted through a water droplet, it flips upside right. And so that's placed in behind so that the Earth is inside of that droplet. And the way that the water droplet will bend things, it turns it into a bit of a globe.
Cool. That just is gorgeous.
Thank you. That was on the cover of Outdoor Photography Canada during the winter, and I was quite honored for that privilege. And it's been one of my favorite images so far this year.
And I love droplets. You have several that that you gave me here. I love droplets that have an image in them, like the one here with the Canadian. Was that the Canadian flag?
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily. I thank you for thinking so. That is my representation of the Canadian flag. That's a photograph that I had taken a couple of years prior of red maple leaves on a bed of snow, made to look like the Canadian flag. And it's been that is the photograph, the one that's used in this image, as it launched my professional career. And so when I have this here, I'm thinking, well, I know I can put a flower in behind, and that's all well and good. I know that works. But what happens if I put an image in behind? And this was my first test of that idea. And it works just the same way. So you take an image and you can put it in behind the droplets. And this is a very densely packed spider web. And so I just sprayed it with water. And so I got all the water droplets on there with my little spray bottle. And then I put the image in behind. And you just got to get the camera lined up, in the proper way so that it's shooting straight through. The image is perfectly straight on to the camera, and you got the spider web in between. And
so
take a picture.
Is the red that we're seeing in the background the full image leaf, or is that some other red?
The red that you see in the background is the out of focus center of the center leaf.
Okay.
And there's another water droplet photograph that has a black background.
Oops.
And the same is true of that. And in that one, you have, that one there. Yeah, the black background is the center of that daisy-like flower. And so you can play around with different color contrast by choosing a certain flower that might have a different colored center. And you know that is going to be the background color.
So, for those of us who maybe not are that much into macro, and maybe we do landscape, I'm a landscape photographer. I know Terry out in chat, that's one of the things he does. And I'm sure a lot of people who listen are landscape photographers. And it's always a struggle to find new landscape. But with macro, new landscape is everywhere.
You can go to the grocery store and buy a $5 potted plant and explore that for the entire afternoon and find different things every time you try. There's so many different things in photography that you'd normally just pass by if you're looking for landscapes. But if you dig your nose into the dirt, you'll find all sorts of interesting stuff. There's one that I had posted just on Google Plus a couple of days ago of some daisies pointing up towards the sun. And it's a shot that's been done a million times before. But it was really fun to just explore a simple flower in every possible angle. And in this case, too, you've got this daisy-like flower that is being explored using just a couple of simple variables: a spray bottle, a spider web, and the flower itself, and fairly extreme magnification. This is probably done at around 3:1 or 4:1. And that one there that you've got up is probably about the same magnification. That one, however, is photographed using a unique tool. Have you ever heard of a third hand?
Third hand, no. And what is this on?
It's on this particular little tool here that I have kind of all folded up. This is called a third hand.
Hold on. Let me bring you in focus. People don't see what I'm talking about. Okay.
So this is a third hand. And this is typically used by people that are maybe soldering electrical components together and that kind of stuff. And you've got two alligator clips, one on either side, and they're all opposable, and they can be fastened and tightened. And then there's this magnifying glass in the center. And so this magnifying glass is what that image is photographed on. And the flower is being held in place by one of these little clips.
Okay.
And so then I've just zoomed in on the magnifying lens itself with my camera and snap away.
Too cool. That is awesome.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're back to this photo.
That's the image right there that was used using that tool.
All right.
In fact, we've got hard water here, and it left some water spots on the magnifying glass. I've never cleaned it since. So.
Now the one. So most of these, you can tell the snowflakes, you can tell the water droplets. I can get that's a flower in the background. This one here, I don't know what that is.
Well,
let me guess. Is that
take a guess?
Bug's eye.
Yes. It is one of the largest nuisance bugs around here. They'll draw blood. It's a deer fly.
Oh, I hate those things.
Close relative of a horsefly.
Yes.
And so they this fly. I was actually out trying to shoot dragonflies at the time, and one of these landed on my neck. And you've got just the knee-jerk reaction. You just reach away and you swat at anything, whether it's a mosquito or a black fly or a deer fly or anything like that.
You.
It's biting me. Yeah. And so I see the thing just flop down, and he was still alive, but I broke his wings, so he couldn't fly away. So I forgot. Now I've got you. And so I was able to zoom in because he wasn't moving to the 6:1 or even closer magnification, and then crop in so that the full frame was just this fly's eye. And this was done with the ring flash. And you can actually see, if you look close enough, there's a bit of a ring flash reflection that's kind of contouring each of the individual compound eyes inside of there. And just, the tiniest things are beautiful in macro photography. Even the most annoying things, like a deer fly, can be a subject of beauty if you get close enough.
All right, so those are all amazing, and this one here though, I kind of I get how you got those the other ones painstakingly taking photo after photo after photo, 200 photos to get those, but this is mid-air. How did you? Most
And
of it looks.
would you believe, Mike, that this photograph is focus stacked?
That's what I was going to ask you. It looks like it's focused at least from the shoulder area, maybe even further, all the way back. I don't, and for most part of the rounded. Now I'm looking at it in a smaller thing here, so I can't tell exactly. But I can't imagine how you could focus stack while he's flying midair.
Well, it's luck on my part. Well, I was trying to frame this bee up because I knew the bees were flying in and out of these flowers, and this was done with a 180 millimeter macro lens, so that I could get a little bit further back from the subject, so that I'm not interfering with the bee when he's trying to enter into the flower, so that he's free to do that. Mm-hmm. And I just had to wait for one bee to come along and want to get into this particular flower and be quick on my trigger. So he's flying in, and I got him in two separate frames, as he was once a little bit closer to me and once a little bit further away, but my focus point didn't change. But because the bee was moving through the focus point, I actually had him at the two focus points that I needed to combine together to make this image. So nice. I took those two frames. I took the one of the main frame that you see with includes the head of the bee, his antennas, his wings, and the flower in the background, and that was my base. And then I took the other frame and I lined up his abdomen from the other frame that was in focus, and then I just painted it in. I masked it in Photoshop so that I could have his abdomen in focus as well. So that was done manually, but it is a focus stacked image of a bee in flight.
Well, that is amazing. So you held steady and let him move through the lens. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. This is another handheld shot.
So anybody looking at this, don't go out in your backyard and run around trying to get the bees in midair.
I have done that. Some bees are just way too fast to predict. And some of them, like leafcutter bees or sweat bees. That's a leafcutter bee right there. And those guys are lightning fast as soon as they're in the air. They just jitter around too quickly to photograph when they're flying. And I tried for about 5 hours. I did get one of them in flight at one point, but it wasn't nearly as good as this one of him sitting there. Now this is a great example of a bee that I wouldn't need to focus stack, particularly because of his odd behavior.
Yeah.
These guys will stick their butt in the air. And so when he sticks his butt in the air, he kind of comes into the exact same focal plane as his eyes and the rest of his body, even though he's not really flat to the camera.
Yeah.
And they do this, I don't know this by the time I'm photographing it, but I'll dig into the details and I'll figure out, okay, well, these guys don't collect pollen on their legs like most honeybees do. They collect it on their abdomen. They've got a pollen brush there. So when they fly into a flower, they stick their butt in the air, and then they brush their back legs to get the pollen against their abdomen, and then they take off, go to the next flower. And they're sticking their butt in the air so that they don't accidentally rub the pollen off. And so I don't know any of this stuff when I'm photographing it, but I find half of the adventure in macro photography is discovering that kind of an image or that kind of a creature and studying it and realizing, well, what the heck is this that I've been missing all this time? I want to learn more. And snowflakes have taught me a lot about physics and the way the world works. But a bee that has this odd behavior will tell me more about everything around me. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's an amazing world going all around us that we usually don't pay attention to.
That's right.
Yeah.
And some things are kind of unexplainable too. I think I sent you a snowflake photograph that looks rather triangular. I think that was one of the images that was in the set, and that's a good example of something that kind of bends the rules as far as the physics that we currently understand. We don't know why this snowflake, we as the collective mankind knowledge, can't explain why this snowflake is triangular. It is six-sided, but 3 of the sides are much smaller than the other 3. And there have been some studies on, maybe the aerodynamic properties of a snowflake might explain it, but there's no concrete evidence. Some will have elongated centers where 2 sides are longer than the other 4, and that can't be explained either. So, when we have people studying the cosmos and trying to figure out, the beginning of time and all that stuff, which is fascinating, we haven't figured out water yet. And so there's kind of an interesting, area to explore in photography that we are on the cutting edge of knowledge if you do it right. And it's an adventure. That's one of the reasons why I like it.
Yeah, it is. when I look at these snowflakes, and you've seen these painted, through Christmas or the holidays or whatever you've seen them through, but to see them in this kind of real life and see that these things are falling from the sky, it is just amazing that this beauty is just falling from the sky everywhere, like that.
Well, and to think that there are trillions of them
Yes.
falling in any good snowstorm. And most people are just frustrated and swearing at them because they're on their car or on their driveway, and they're getting in the way of them getting to work.
Well, we see them in big clumps,
Yeah.
So it's not exactly the same.
But you think about them in big clumps too, and snowflakes, believe it or not, and I'm just trying to put all the things together. I'm writing some of the content for my book, and I was thinking, snowflakes are the reason why life is the way it is, at least in temperate climates in the world, because they lock together into clumps, and snow has a lot of air inside of it. If it keeps falling, and it makes a great insulator. So a lot of ground cover plants are insulated from the extreme coldest days of the winter, and that prevents them from being damaged or being killed. So these plants have evolved because snow lets them be a little bit more flexible in the temperatures that they can survive within. And if snow didn't exist, or snowflakes didn't exist, then those plants would have to have evolved into a different way. And that means that if those plants were different, then so too were all the herbivores and animals that fed on them, and life as we know it in temperate climates would be entirely different without snowflakes.
It's a connected system.
It's a connected system.
It is an amazing connected system. So now I'm going to give a warning, and this warning is mainly to me because I really don't want to see this next photo, but I feel like I have to show it. And Tim, you might want to close your eyes. This one's a little scary.
If
I don't know how.
There's no way I can even blink now.
I don't know how I'm going to go to the next photo because I'm going to close my eyes as soon as I press this one. And that is the spider.
Oh yes, if you're a arachnophobic, you might want to turn
fan.
away here.
I am not a spider fan, so this is not good.
It's
a great image, and there's a lot of detail there, but it makes it even more scary.
This is a zebra spider, and he's got himself a long-legged fly of some species that he's chowing down on. A well-deserved meal for this little guy. Zebra spiders are one of the cutest spiders because they got the two big front eyes. They look so curious and so innocent, like big puppy dog eyes kind of thing. And so in this case, this is one of those images where I don't use a ring flash. I use an off-camera flash, and you can kind of see the flash head as the catchlight in his eyes.
Yeah.
And if you could imagine a ring flash being in his eyes, it would be rather distracting. So an off-camera flash on a cord is what I use for a lot of my spiders and all of my water droplet photographs as well, because you don't want that ring flash reflection. Now, the best way to photograph an insect that won't normally stop moving is get him when he's eating. And great way to photograph a spider is when he's got food. Same thing for ants or anything else that never stops moving. Bees, they're in a flower, and that's the moment where they're sort of foraging and that kind of stuff. Any insect that's eating is far easier to photograph than an insect that's looking for food. So this guy was pretty cooperative. He kept turning around on me, though, as if to say, this is mine, get your own. and eventually he cooperated and just kind of sat there and stared at me curiously for a little while.
Yeah, I figured you're not going to take his food, so.
Yeah, well, the other thing about jumping spiders is if they don't have food...
Whoa. This thing jumps?
Yeah, these are jumping spiders.
Now Mike's really terrified.
So if he doesn't have food, and I'm at the same magnification, they're curious enough, and I don't know if it's defensive or just curiosity, but they'll jump on your lens. And so a lot of times when I've been trying to photograph these things, they jump on my lens, and then I have to move them back to whatever I was photographing them on, and then try to get close enough again before they decide to jump. And this is a repeating pattern for about a dozen times before I get the shot in focus that I need. And they're harmless little things. I mean, there's, I'm going to say, as harmless as a praying mantis. Praying mantis is a very docile creature. That's why people have them as pets. You can pick them up and carry them around, and they make a great macro subject because they don't move. Same thing for walking sticks. But these jumping spiders are quite active and quite jumpy. They're out in the daytime, and they don't make any webs or nests or anything. The only use that they have for a web is as a safety line. So when they'll anchor themselves and then they'll jump, but in case they miss, they've got a safety line so that they don't jump off a cliff or something.
That's smart.
And I don't know any of this stuff before I start photographing these cute little spiders. I just figure it out as I go. After I take.
I don't know if
try to
cute
ask
is the
myself
right
what it
word
is.
to use with
Yeah.
him.
I would say, you know, Melissa in the chat says that he's cute. So I think that
He
I'm
reminds
not
me of
the
the
only one
spider
here.
from one of the Harry Potter movies.
He does, yes. Somewhat of that.
Aragog.
Yep. Okay, yeah. I'm not a big spider fan, but I can see that there's an amazing amount of detail there that you're bringing out, and
And this
and
is
I like the
all the
lighting.
detail. All the detail in there for those that are afraid of focus stacking, if they're not sure if they want to go down that road. This is another image that is not focus stacked. It's not something that you need to do, as long as you get everything within that same focal plane and you're very careful with your angle and how much you can get within that exact same plane, that two-dimensional plane. Then you can get everything in focus that you need to. If your subject can be photographed that way. The snowflakes, I photograph them on an angle for a number of different reasons, but in this case with the spider. He works just dandy with his eyes and his prey in focus.
Yeah, and I like
Right,
the
as long as the eyes
lighting
are
in this one
focused.
too.
Yeah, and when you have like an off-camera flash to a spider, I mean, in relation to the size of the creature, that flash is like a gigantic softbox.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so you don't really need to worry about any flash modifiers. You can. A lot of people will try to soften the light, but I kind of like the shadow depth that's created
I
in
do
an
too.
image like this when you don't modify it.
All right, to make us all feel a little better, let's go to something a little more pleasing.
One question came up on this. How long did it take you to get this shot?
It took me to, I'm going to say maybe around 4 to 5 minutes, and that's just because the spider kept turning around on me. And then maybe about the same amount of time in post-processing, because, you know, I was just
Much better
cleaning
than
up
the
some of background.
snowflake.
Yeah. Spiders are easier to photograph than snowflakes.
And then it was. I'll go back to that image. On the other question, was this direct or was this bounced on the flash?
The flash was pointed directly at this guy.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you can see with the catch light in his eyes, the flash is being kind of held up and to the right.
Yeah, no, I like the catch light, and you're right. If that was a ring flash, that would be totally distracting. The fact that it's not a ring flash, but you got the catch light there.
But
really-
if you can picture how I'm holding this, because I'm holding the camera and the flash is being held up and to the right. So I've got my camera with this hand. I've got my other hand underneath the camera, held up and on an angle like this. So
hold on.
I'm sort of twisting
gotta-
myself around to get that shot.
I got to do that again because people didn't see it.
Yeah, so I'm holding the camera with this hand, and then my flash is right up around like this here. And if I can position myself in there, that's sort of how I have to photograph this spider. So it
And then he
requires
jumps on you.
And then he jumps on me.
Yeah, the problem with that angle is that there's no third hand for the fly swatter.
No. You're at the spider's mercy at that point.
Yeah, you are. You shouldn't be trying to kill your subject.
Yeah.
So okay, let's go back to. Hold on, I got to get everything set up here.
Bring up that butterfly again.
gonna-
That was a cool picture.
I'm gonna bring up the butterfly now. That makes me feel more a little at ease. The butterfly.
And so this guy, a pearl crescent butterfly, had landed on a patch of flowers. This is one of those moments where I was just sitting in a bunch of flowers for a couple of hours. We've got a wildflower pathway at our waterfront down here. The city's just made a natural path and let the wildflowers grow around. So I'll just pick a patch of them and sit there for a little while. And along comes a butterfly. And along came dragonflies and spiders and all sorts of things. But this guy, I just happened to be photographing an ant, like just out of the frame from this guy here, and he lands on the same flower. And I have just enough time to reposition the camera, snap a shot before he realized that I'm there and I'm dangerous, before flying away. And because the lens that I'm using is a 65mm macro lens, I've got to get pretty close to my subject in order to get the subject in focus, which means some shy animals, insects like damselflies and a lot of butterflies and moths, will fly away well before I can get my camera and myself over top of it, because I'm like this gigantic monster that's slowly creeping towards them, closer and closer, and then their fight or flight instinct kicks in and they fly away. So this guy, he landed next to me and I was already sitting there. So sometimes you just have to sit and wait and the photo comes to you.
Now, how close? You say you have to get close. How close are you within?
At that point, I'm probably around from the end of my lens, about 8 centimeters away.
Oh wow!
Which is, I mean, like that close kind of thing.
Yeah, very close. And I guess the ant that you were photographing is this one here, maybe?
No, that's not an ant actually. That is a wasp.
Oh,
that
yes.
is a gigantic, ferocious man-eater wasp. That thing's got to be about 8 centimeters long itself. I mean, that's a monster.
Now, here's the weird thing about me is I'm less afraid of that than the spider.
You should be more afraid of this guy.
I should be, but I'm not.
They were horribly aggressive. I was trying to get a close-up picture of them, and then they would just start zooming back and forth in front of my eyes as if they're trying to threaten me away. And I didn't give up. I just kept trying to photograph this guy, and then eventually I was trying to get them in flight, right? Because that's always the cool shot. And this guy had just jumped up towards my lens, and I was doing a burst shot, and it just so happened that as he was rocketing himself towards the front element of my lens, I got a shot of him that was in focus.
This is all manual focus, I'm assuming then?
Well, that lens doesn't have manual focus. That lens has no focus.
Oh, no, okay.
It has a working distance. Okay. So at its magnification point, say if I'm at 1:1, I'm working at around 10 centimeters. If I'm at 5:1, I'm working at around 4 centimeters. And the only way that I get my subject in focus is by physically moving the camera and the lens back and forward. And then I just have to get it to whatever that working distance is. And that's typically the way when you have any extreme magnification that you're going to have to focus. Don't worry about autofocus. Autofocus is going to screw you up. Because if your subject just happens to be, like a lot of times you're trying to get the subject to be as close as possible, right, at the 1:1. And if your focus is, or if your subject is just a hair closer than your minimum focusing distance, your camera's autofocus is going to hunt back and forth constantly, and it's going to not find anything. So typically what you would do is you would set it to manual focus and not worrying about changing the focusing on the lens itself, but moving the whole thing forward and backward. Sneaker focus, I call it.
What about what f-stop are you usually shooting at?
It depends because it's relative. When I'm at 1:1 magnification, I might be photographing around between f8, f10, somewhere in that range.
Oh, so not like extremes at f16 or anything like that.
Well, I can, but the issue comes in that you have to deal with diffraction limiting.
Yeah.
And so like if I'm at 5:1 magnification, I usually set my aperture to around f4.5 or f5. But that's also because f4.5 is not my true aperture. My true aperture at that point would be about f27. And the MPE 65mm macro lens comes with a conversion chart, page 8 of the manual if anybody wants to look it up. And in there you'll be able to see that if you dial in f16 at 5:1 magnification, you're actually getting f96.
Wow.
And at f96, well, not only do you need the light of 1,000 suns to light up your subject, you'll also hit a limit where everything gets soft because light is bending off course for the pixel that it should be hitting, and it's hitting all the pixels around it. And this is diffraction limiting, and Cambridge in Color has a great article on that I've referred a number of people to. Right. I'll send you a link to it. You can put that in the show notes for people that want to read more up on diffraction limiting. But it's kind of the same effect as a pinhole camera, where everything's out of focus, kind of. Everything's kind of blurry. Yeah. And at first when I bought this lens and I was shooting, okay, well, f16 is generally not so bad. Let's get a good magnification and see what this lens can do. Take it for a test drive. I was ending up with every image soft. Like, it couldn't possibly focus. And I thought I had a bad copy of the lens. I was about to return it before I dug into the science and physics behind it all and realized that, no, it's my problem. It's not the lens's problem.
And that diffraction can happen with any lens, a regular lens. You know, lenses rarely operate at their best when they're completely wide open or completely stopped down.
But that's I think that's due to different optical principles.
Yeah.
As far as when they're wide open, it's a slightly different phenomenon. But
right.
it's all around image quality.
Yeah.
You know, you want to have the best quality. Like my telephoto lens works best at around f8, and so I try to use it there if at all possible.
Yeah.
So.
Now, a question out in chat: do you always have a flash? Do you always use a flash?
Not always. Now, in most cases, I do, and I'm just trying to look at all the images that I sent you there, Mike, and I'm just, every single one of them that I had sent you was done with a flash. So I'm going to say 90% of my macro work is done using a flash. Sometimes I'll do some natural light stuff, but it's not very often. It's often when using a flash is impractical, or the light that nature is giving me is just much better. The only one that's actually a balance between flash and ambient light would be that B in flight that I focus stacked, because there's a bit of ambient light coming in there, but most of it's just entirely the flash from the whether it be off camera or ring flash or Pringle scan.
Yeah.
And we go from there.
Okay. Well, Don, we're at the hour, and I really appreciate you coming out tonight. We've learned a lot, and I'm trying to convince Don to come back because macro. This is the first time we've gone over macro, and we can do a whole other show on macro. We kind of just touched the surface here, but I'd encourage everybody. I want to go out this weekend and use my macro lens. Encourage everybody out to go out there and explore the world. Heck, even the world in your own house. You don't even have to go outside.
No,
Macro.
a lot of the stuff that I do, a lot of my like water droplet refraction images, or even some of my insect photographs, they're done on my kitchen counter.
Yeah.
And so you can build yourself a stage and take your image anywhere you want. You just have to envision what you want to create and go out and do it.
Yeah, so I encourage everybody to go out there and give that a try. And even if you don't have a macro lens, like Don was giving some great tips on some things you can do that are fairly cheap. Extension tubes are fairly cheap. The reverse, what do you call that? The reverse attack.
Yeah, to put the lens on backwards.
Yeah. So a lot of things you can do if you don't have a macro lens, you don't want to buy one. There's a lot of things you can do to do that. But the subject I'm trying to convince Don to come back to next, and if you go to his sites, we'll put the links in there. You'll see he's already really good at this. I don't know if you're ready to actually come talk about it, but that is infrared photography. I think you're ready to come talk about it.
Well, I've just modified one of my cameras for infrared work, and you can find some of my images on Google Plus right now for the infrared stuff. I don't even know, it's so fresh for me. I don't think I've updated my website to include many of them. So it's on Google Plus, and this is giving me the kick in the butt to go and update my website now to put that stuff there. But that is an entirely different world. It's an invisible world, much the same way that macro is, and so it's right in my alley. And I'm going to be exploring that very fully over this summer, and I'd be happy to come back and talk about it.
We'd love to have you come back because that is a subject that I love to. Also, I'd love to talk about that one. And just one question on that. We won't cover that too in depth here, but you got your camera converted to full-time IR. Did you go through LifePixel?
LifePixel is a company that did it for me.
So I'm looking at that because I'm going to take my D100 and have that done, and I'm debating between what filter, because when you go to have your camera converted, you got to choose, what IR conversion you want to do. Which one did you choose?
I chose the standard. It was very much the same as the deep black and white kind of version, except it did give me a bit of color to play with. If I wanted the deep version, I could just convert it to black and white and kick up the contrast, and it's about the same effect. But with the standard one, there's a bit of color there that I could nurse out and make a little bit more vibrant and play with that a bit, and I've been able to do that successfully. And then they have like all sorts of crazy colorful ones, and I thought, well, for the kind of work that I've always imagined myself doing, the standard IR filter, which is about the same wavelength cutoff as Hoya makes an R72 infrared filter for unmodified cameras, and I've used that as well with some success. But we should save the rest of that talk for another show.
Yeah, we'll save that for another show because that's a topic that we can spend some time on and go over that. And I think people who have not seen IR before, it can just be absolutely gorgeous. And like you said, there's a lot of choices. I've been looking at the enhanced IR, maybe it was. I don't know. That's what I haven't done it because once you do it, you're stuck.
So I converted my 5D Mark II after I upgraded. I was hemming and hawing about selling the camera, and I decided, let's just bite the bullet, and it cost me about $450, including the shipping. And now I have a camera that can only photograph in infrared. And you know what?
I'm looking at one of those pictures on your Google Plus. I put it in the chat also of that tree you just took last week. That is amazing.
Oh, yeah. That tree is like amazing. A block away. And
you zoom in on it, the leaves just are spectacular.
Thank you.
We're doing this in closing, so we can spend a little time on it, but not too much. The thing I liked about it, so let's say I go out in the morning, and I'm getting my landscape morning shots, and then you're getting more into the middle of the day, and typically
for the harsh overhead,
right.
Noonday sun.
Typically for landscape,
awful. You go and you take a nap.
Yeah, exactly. IR gives you the chance to shoot that part of the day.
Exactly. That is the kind of the day, or the part of the day that IR will just be the best at, because you've got the hottest infrared light coming down, and you can just use that to your advantage. That photograph of that tree was taken in the early afternoon when the lighting wouldn't be good for much landscape work.
Yeah, that's what you had written in your notes.
And
Terry's asking, what does the conversion involve?
So we should save that for the next show.
We should save that for the next show.
There you go.
Stay tuned for that before we go down that rat hole.
And here, and for a teaser there, and something for both of us to be thinking about there, Don, is I have run into some problems when I switched to. So when I originally was doing this, I was using Nikon's software that came with the camera, and it was
Yes.
able to convert the white balance fairly easily. It was all easy. There's some struggles to do that conversion in Lightroom, and there's some tricks that you got to use.
You have to use 3 different tools to do it. Of course, Lightroom is your editor, but you also need the Adobe DNG Converter and the Adobe Profile Editor, which has been in beta since 2010 or 2011.
Yeah.
And they haven't touched it since. So you're using some archaic, outdated software to do some under-the-hood modifications to profiles in Lightroom. And it's a bit of a process, but you can use Lightroom in that workflow. And when you have it set up, you only have to do that crazy stuff once.
Yeah.
And then you're good to go.
So maybe what we can do is do a live conversion during when you come back. I can do it, or you can do it. Whatever we'll do. We'll do a live conversion of an infrared shot, and maybe before. It depends on when you come back on. I can have my camera converted, or we'll just use some of your images. I do have a filter. The one problem with the filter is even in the middle of the day, it is still, you got to pre-focus, frame up your image and everything, because once you put that filter on there, you're not seeing anything.
Exactly. On some of the newest cameras that can really crank the ISO, you can turn on live view, and you can kind of do a little bit in live view to see it, but you're really squinting, and you almost need a dark cloth over that screen because everything is still so dark.
Yeah.
And so it's not the ideal scenario. And of course, your quality is not going to be quite the same due to using a filter and for the longer exposures required. But again, more discussions for another show.
Yes, more discussion for another show. All right, so now let's go to our contest. So let me pull these up. So we had 3 finalists. We had Doug Curran with his bearded lizard, and maybe I should get rid of our image there so you can see the images in total. And the topic this is for May. The topic was pets, and we did expand it out to be animals, so it covered more than just pets. Although I think the 3 finalists maybe were pets. Doug Curran, Jeannie Kessler, hopefully I said her name right. If she's out there in chat, she'll let me know I didn't. Is this one, the cat? And there's a cute photo of that one of our members of the Facebook group converted him into Yoda. Him or her into Yoda. And if you're not in the group, you need to go check that out. That's an awesome conversion. And then the last one by Sarah Fierce, here of her bulldog or whatever. So Tim, do you want to make some comments on any of these?
Well, I liked all 3 of them, and I think 2 of them were in probably of the 5 that I had selected in my I think there were about 44 in there. I think overall my favorite turned out to be the lizard. I just loved the detail of him. I mean, here we're talking about macro photography, and it's not macro in this case, but it's pretty close. I love the picture. I love the background to it. It was just
I love the
phenomenal
details
shot.
and the focus in that one too. It's good. But I like all 3. They each have their own merits.
Yeah, I like the color, the detail, the focus on this one. This one was excellent from that standpoint. The cat one, I actually like the conversion to black and white. I mean, I think it would, if it was color, it would not be as strong for me.
I think that the black and white conversion forces you to look more at the lines, and the lines in this case are the wet fur, and the eyes, and the very sad face, and the whiskers, and that really brings out the character. This tells a story. Yeah. And when an image tells a story, I think it always adds an extra bit of depth to it. Like this cat, he's having a bad day. Who knows what happened before? Who knows what happens afterwards? But his day is ruined.
And he's in a tub. Cats hate being in a tub, or he's in something that looks like it's wet with suds.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the first time I looked at it, I thought it was a dog at first. It's like, oh, wait a second, maybe not.
Well, speaking of dogs,
but I like Yoda. I think that's true.
Yeah. And speaking of dogs, here's Sarah Fierce's entry, and we had a lot of you mentioned there were 43, or at least maybe even more than that, 40 something entries, and there was a number of really good ones. This was a tough month on the voting, and we have changed the voting up a little bit. So remember, next month you can only vote for your top 5. I'm showing my hand and you can't see me, but the top 5 favorites. That way, you don't go through and like all of them. You just like the ones that are your favorites. You don't have to do 5, but no more than 5. This one from Sarah, I like the focus on this one. I like the dog's expression.
I like the fact that it's at eye level. You know, if the photograph was taken from a higher vantage point, it would lose the impact. But it's right down on the ground with the dog.
And that is one of the key things that as people get into photography don't do right at the early part of their, when they're still the JPEG person and not the RAW, JPEG to RAW. When they're JPEG person, they're just shooting down on subjects rather than
Especially at children.
Yeah, rather than getting down to the subject level. So this one, I love getting down to subject level. I'm not sure.
I made four rules when I started in photography that I always try to follow, and number 4 is the world is not 5.5 feet tall.
Yes.
Don't just stand there at eye level, because that's the most uninteresting angle you could possibly photograph.
Absolutely.
I think that's probably the one tip I give to more people, of let's say my friends, than any other tip. Well, that, and don't stab at the shutter. I mean, squeeze it. Don't stab, because that's where you get your blurry photos.
My only criticism of this one would probably be the background, the distraction of the houses in the background. It does make you realize this is a pet, or at least make you think it's her pet. Is showing you that he's in the fenced yard, that kind of thing. I would have to see it without that to know if it was stronger or not. But that would be my only criticism. I like the color.
I agree, Mike. I think that fence in the background is a bit of a distraction, because you've got some vertical lines that in your eyes will typically go to lines in a photograph, and there's no real reward for looking at that. It does put it into some context, being that he's trapped and that's why he's pouty. But beyond that, I think that maybe having something else in the background, maybe having a tree or stepping, a good solution for this would be possibly stepping back and zooming in. Because if you do that, then the background becomes much more condensed behind him, so you see less of it. You'd maybe only see the center house in the background, and you'd lose some of the main big fence posts, and that would be a bit less distracting, even in the same location. So there are ways around it.
Oh, that's a good tip. That's a good tip. So, Tim, do we have any drum roll or anything like that? Do you have that ready? Or do
I can get that quickly.
We can go to the winner.
All right, whenever you're ready.
You do the drum roll. The winner of the May 2013 photo challenge is Doug Curran with his lizard. Good job, Doug. That's an excellent photo. Doug wins a $25 gift certificate from Amazon, $25 towards Stacy Jensen's website, and his image will be on our profile image in our Facebook group, and he gets to pick the next month's context subject. I guess that'll be July's subject, because we already have one for June. And the reason we can give away the $25 Amazon gift certificate is because we are, when every time you go to Amazon, you use our code, we get a little bit of credit. So please remember to do that, because last month we only made $9, and giving away 25, making 9, that math doesn't work for very long.
And you're an accountant, so
yes,
we know that.
I'm an accountant, and I will not front the money every month. So we want to be sure to give our winner something. It doesn't add any cost to you. It's really easy. All you got to do is go to amazon.jpeg2RAW.com, or just go to our site, jpeg2RAW.com, and click on the Amazon link. It's really easy. Adds no cost to you, but gives the show a little bit of credit. And it doesn't even have to be photo related. You can buy a DVD. You can buy, Don, will your book be out on Amazon?
I sure hope it will be. When you go I will be shipping some to them to have them sell them there. So.
When you go to buy Don's book, you go and use our code, and then the show will get a little bit of credit. So, it's really easy to do that. It's no extra cost to you, and the show gets a little credit, and it lets us keep doing that. We're also, a couple weeks ago, we switched to having both our mobiles and our normal broadcast through live stream. Because we had some trouble with Justin TV. Justin TV, Don started doing full videos, commercials, right in the middle of our show. And it was different for every viewer. Every viewer had it at a different time. So, that just made it completely unusable. So we're now both...
and they're shooting themselves in the foot to do that.
They are.
Yeah.
So for us, having one at Justin TV and one at Livestream meant if either one of them went down during the show was still going because the other one was there. But now that we have both of our streams, both the high stream and the low stream, going to live stream, it means that we're at live stream's mercy. And if live stream starts doing that during the middle of the show, there's not much we can do. So we're trying to plan ahead, and one of the things we're trying to do is get more subscribers to our YouTube channel. When you get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, you can stream live to YouTube.
Aha.
And it's a little different than a Hangout on Air. So if you heard about a Hangout on
Yep.
Air, that is one thing. But as you watch the show tonight, the way I'm able to go in and out of photos and in and out of different scenes with us, you can't really do that as easily with a Hangout on Air. But we'll be able to stream straight from our software here to that. But we need you to subscribe to the channel. jpeg2RAW. Was it YouTube/jpeg2RAW? Our users. YouTube/users/jpeg2RAW. Just go to YouTube and search for jpeg2RAW. It's really easy. We got a long way to go, so we're it's not something we're going to be able to do next week, but it's trying to plan ahead and get ready for that day that live stream decides to do it. Hopefully that's a long time from now, but we want to be ready.
Cross your fingers.
Cross your fingers. So
Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, right?
and you don't yes, exactly. You don't get a ton of junk mail. You can turn that off. You're not going to be receiving all this stuff. Subscribing on YouTube is really easy. It doesn't cost you anything, and you're not going to be spammed out like crazy. So go do that. If you want to get the show, the show here with Don, if you weren't able to watch the whole show, it'll be on YouTube, of course, but also be on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, audio only on Stitcher Radio, Zune, BlackBerry, if there's anybody out there who still has a BlackBerry, and even on TiVo. We're even out there on TiVo. And I'm going to say this every week until I hear from somebody. If you're one of our 3 listeners from Afghanistan, I would love for you to email me. Now,
Yes.
if you're there on some covert operation,
Well, maybe not.
yeah, if you're there in a covert operation, I understand maybe you have to email me later on when you get back somewhere else. If you're part of the Taliban, be interested in finding out, more about that too. But I don't know. Apparently our government listens to all our emails, so I don't know. Getting an email from Taliban would be too good for me.
Just stay quiet.
That might
at
hurt
point.
our ratings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're one of our 3 Afghanistan listeners, or if you're really any listener from outside of the United States, or for that matter, inside of the United States, and you want to contact us, it's really easy. Just podcast@jpeg2RAW.com. Send us a comment, questions, if you have any guest suggestions, anything like that. And Don, I'll talk to you something about that in here just a minute.
Sure.
So hang on as we go ahead and end the show. Tim, anything that I missed?
Yeah, what's on your shirt?
Oh, so the shirt says, I bought this for the cruise. It says, keep calm and ask your mom.
There you go.
Keep calm and ask your mom.
All right, now we got it.
Yeah, it's a little anticlimactic there, isn't it? But, still. If you're not, okay, here's one more thing to close out. If you're not a member of a Facebook group, which has been growing, we're getting close to 780 now members, Tim. We're closing on to 800. Before long we'll be to 1,000. If you're not a member there, you can't join these contests like we just had, these challenges, unless you're a member. You can't vote unless you're a member. So come in and join and vote. There's a lot of good conversation going on there. I'm sure, like it happens often, after the show, we go into the Facebook group, we start talking about things. So there's probably going to be some macro discussions going on in the Facebook group afterwards, after all the amazing things Don showed us tonight.
Well,
So
if there's a discussion happening, they tag me on Facebook by some method, and maybe I'll be able to chime in and help out with that conversation. But if
awesome.
anybody has any questions on macro photography in general, feel free to just send me an email, contact me on Google Plus, or anywhere that I am online. I'm always happy to talk about it further.
Yeah, I got all those links in the show notes already.
And whenever you have a workshop coming up, always, if you want to email us, we'll put it on our Facebook group and
Great.
and all that. So whatever little publicity we can get. We're a growing show, so hopefully every week we get more ability to do that. So we always
you very
love
much.
we love to give back any little way we can to people who've come on and share their knowledge with us, Don. And we want you to come back again too.
Happy to come back.
And then, whenever you get your book out, let us know. We'll publish that too.
Sure.
Maybe
and I
we'll-
hope that you want to get a copy yourself, too. I'll autograph yours. Well, I'll autograph everybody's, but yours specifically, Mike.
Thank you very much. All right, so yes, I think that's it that we have there. So until next week, we'll go ahead and close out now. Until next week, keep it raw.
Good night, everybody.